Brito, and it's a pleasure for me to be here with you for another day of our Global Management Week 2023. This year's themes are Globalization Shift, yesterday, Climate Change today, and AI impacts on companies and careers tomorrow. And tomorrow, in our third day, we will discuss the applications of artificial intelligence in companies and its impact on executive careers. To promote a reflection on the subject, we'll invite everyone to a competition for projects in artificial intelligence, competing for $200,000 in scholarships offered by institutions supporting this event. Check out the regulation and join us, okay? We will now introduce the team of experts who will be with us today. Professor Amy Ryan is with us today. She is from the University at Albany, New York, SUNY New York, teaching several courses and programs there. Professor Ryan holds a master's in management. She is founder of ESG Strategies and vice president of Circular Economy. Her expertise spans the disciplines of sustainability, energy, ESG, and compliance with circular economy programs. Thank you so much for coming today, Professor Amy. Professor Cesar Righetti is also with us today. Thank you very much. Professor Righetti holds a P&G business and is a partner at Global Performance Consulting and Prospera, as well as a professor in sustainability and coordinator of the Business Sustainability Research Center at IBS Americas. Welcome, Professor Righetti. And I'm very grateful for the presence with us today of Professor Emmeline de Pius, Director of the College of Business of the University of Livorno, one of the most important universities in California. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Pius. Before we begin this discussion, I need to share with you, the viewers, on our understanding of this topic. It has been many years since the issue of climate change ceased to be a technical, scientific matter and began to dominate the world's political agenda in the worst possible way, let's say. On one hand, there are people who defend the idea that there are no climate change at all, or that it's not caused by human activity, especially the use of fossil fuels. It's evident that these positions are mistaken and more closely associated to the interests of oil industry lobbyists than with a technical opinion. Climate change is caused by human action and is costing thousands of lives and trillions of dollars. The reality is that we have lost the race against time, and the predictions of what would happen in the planet climate in 20 or 30 years are happening now. In face of it, society and businesses need to do their part and continue to pressure governments to prevent the situation from getting even worse, working towards a desirable, but let's say, unlikely reverse of the current situation. That being said, today's discussion aims to consider the impacts of climate change on companies. How should managers act in the face of this new global reality? It's futile to wait for the world to return to the relatively stable climate it had 20 or 30 years ago. So, I'd like to start our discussion by asking Professor Emily de Pius how climate change is affecting companies. Doctor, how do you assess the current scenario and how this context has affected the way companies are being managed?
Sure, thank you, Dr. Brito. The first thing we have to understand is that things are different now. And what's different is we can no longer predict what happens next. So businesses run on being able to spread out their risk, on being able to manage their risk. At the root of this, at the very foundation, is the insurance sector. The insurance sector helps us all manage our risk. And the insurance sector now finds itself in a position where their historical data no longer help them predict the future. That's different from how things were before. That's new. So it's not just these things we're seeing in the headlines. There are wildfires, there are floods, the ocean is heating. These things are happening now and nobody predicted them. And that's what's different from before. So insurance companies find themselves in an incredibly difficult position. And in the short term, some of them have responded by simply stopping writing policies. In California, 3 of the 4 biggest insurance companies are just not writing homeowners policies anymore. In Florida, one of the biggest insurance companies has just completely stopped writing new policies. So imagine the effect on homeowners, on individuals, on businesses. This is very different from how things have been in the past. It's a new problem.
I understand. So in this context, how are companies reacting to these new challenges?
So companies are very aware of this situation and they're trying to take action on their own. Now, individual action and even action by companies is not going to solve the whole problem, but people are taking action, like companies are trying to be more carbon neutral. They are trying to, conserve energy. Of course, that's been going on for a long time. There are many reasons to conserve energy, including saving money, but now there's more at stake. Trying to reduce the use of fossil fuels. For example, the county of Hawaii has just mandated going to all electric cars and all electric vehicles. That is easier said than done, because when everybody wants to buy electric vehicles and there's not enough parts in the supply chain, then you get, the government says I can only use this, but this isn't going to be available until 5 years from now. So that can put people in a little bit of a bind. One thing that companies are doing is thinking about their employees, because employees are affected by if a road washes out, if your house goes sliding down the hill in a landslide, that it's going to make it very hard to get to work. And something as simple as human resources policies around employee absences, just being more understanding and more cognizant about those issues when it comes to your employees. Some employees are dealing with longer and longer commutes. Because of housing prices, that unfortunately, then we get into a situation of burning more fuel, cars on the road for a longer time. These things are all interrelated, and without concerted action from the world's governments and the largest companies, things are not really going to move. So people and companies are doing things individually. People are cognizant of the issue, but the needle is not moving in the right direction yet.
Excellent, Professor Emmeline de Pius from the University of Laverne. Thank you very much. I'd like then to ask Professor Riget the same question. Professor Riget, my first question for you is about the impacts of climate change. So could you please clarify how climate changes has affected companies and provide some of the most evident examples for us?
When we talk about climate change, I used to say that the name of the game is uncertainty. Uncertainty regarding what will be the consumer behavior when we have a heat wave, when we have a flood. So how my market will be affected, how my operation will be affected. If you think on different sectors, if let's say you are a consumer good company, you sell beverages, so the heat wave will increase probably your market. But what about lack of water for your plants? So how to deal with that? So both revenues and costs will be affected. So the name of the game is uncertainty. So the idea is to try to forecast what will be the impact and see how to react that before the fact happens. If you go to some researchers from Harvard, from Oxford, and also from the major consulting firms like McKinsey. They research for the last 20 years and they realized that the results from the companies that have a sustainability strategy really close to the business strategy, they had better results. They they had better financial results, a bigger correlation between the stronger the ESG agenda, the stronger the results, the smaller the risk, and also the results regarding the stock options. So the shares of the companies went better in general. I'm not saying that all of the companies that have ESG in their agenda went better, but that the correlation is stronger. So if you do this information for the investors, they will be more comfortable to invest in companies that have a better ESG agenda related to the business. So it's important, again, to see for each sector what will be the likely impact of climate change and then forecast the possible scenarios. That's that's how we react, that's how we work as a professor with the students, how to predict uncertainty, how to react with uncertainty. And we are talking in large sense, we are talking about environmental issues, also social issues, because there are strong social impact when you have heat waves, for example. And let's say you are a company of fashion and works in, you have a plants in Asia that export to Europe and the United States. You have to be able to react accordingly to the heat waves, how you prepare your operation, how you change your fashion collections for your clients. So those things are very related to climate change, and that's how we prepare our students, for example, to think about how thinking on the company's needs, how we prepare students to respond to this uncertainty.
So interesting, Professor Cesar. Thank you very much. Considering what you just explained, Professor, how can a manager respond to these challenges and problems today?
The, the companies realize it, the studies realize it. I'm talking about Harvard and Oxford, for example, realize that the companies that have ESG in their business strategy, they went better for the last 20 years. So regarding risk reduction, regarding revenue protection, regarding cost reduction, they were more prepared when they have ESG in their agenda. So if you see the numbers, if you see the researchers, the companies were ready to move the Titanic from the side or to the other side, depending on the factors that the climate change are bringing. So how do the sectors react to that? There is a strong tool that we discuss in our course, is that the name is materiality matrix, where you discuss ESG factors, what are the impacts for the business and also for the stakeholder of the company. Stakeholder here are clients, investors, governments, communities, and so on. So when you define the materiality for that sector, you know in terms of climate changes, right? So the company, your answer is the company has to be able to discuss sustainability, create its own matrix, and have a business strategy very related, very orientated by that materiality matrix, in our opinion.
Thank you, Professor Cesar. I'd like now to ask Dr. Ryan a different question here. Dr. Ryan, in your opinion, what are the main barriers to the success of projects and business from the perspective of sustainability?
Sustainability is a mindset. And the one thing that we really try to emphasize in class here is that whatever your experience and understanding of what sustainability is, there is an entire ecosystem of influences behind that we get to talk about. And a lot of that touches upon what are the barriers, which are usually cultural or financial or policy-driven types of barriers. So we know that they're there, we acknowledge that, and to catalyze that change, we start with these discussions of going, we know what these known barriers are. We then need to strategize and position ourselves as leaders, as agents for sustainable change, to be creative in our thought processes and our pathways to solve problems.
I understand, Dr. Ryan, but considering what you just told us, how are companies facing their main challenges regarding to sustainable development?
Depending on who you ask that question to, it's a very interesting and unique time within today's global economy. And this is something that we touch upon in class a lot, is the magnitude, the enormous spread of generational experience that is within today's workplace, no matter where you are. And having that conversation with, say, someone that is in their early 20s or a seasoned professional that's in their 30s and 40s or even beyond, everyone is coming to the table with an understanding of sustainability in possibly a different way. And so what's, I think, the responsibility of and just the hope of what IBS is doing is articulating that sustainability is cross-generational. We need to have the influence from everyone together. And that starts in the classroom here by us all agreeing that our goal is to become sustainable agents of change. Does not matter what the background generation you may have or where you come from. You're here, you're showing up, you are the agent for that, and we are going to give you the tools that you're going to bring back to wherever you're going so that you can feel empowered, have the skills and the conversational confidence to begin that conversation within your own daily lives.
Excellent, Dr. Ryan. Thank you so much. One more question, please, enjoying your presence here. Having worked in the US on sustainable development projects, would you give us an idea of the main difference that come to mind when comparing your experience in doing the same kind of work in other regions of the world?
The difference right now between the US market and the rest of the world or the global market really has to do with policy and cultural stance as it relates and acceptability of sustainability. And this is infused throughout all factions of life within this country as well as the rest of the world. The difference here, though, is that there are now becoming more and more mandates as well as incentives for companies to start behaving in a more sustainable manner. So that now leaves a responsibility to start to educate the younger generations about what does that mean when they become a meaningful individual within that business, or if they are to go into policy making or governing. The rest of the world has similar challenges, if not more, when it comes to policy. But the biggest barrier also is fiscal access or even the infrastructure itself. And that is where it's our responsibility, or the developed world's responsibility, to be that agent and to always realize that in education, knowledge transfer is one of the most important things that we can offer.
Thank you, Dr. Ryan. Well, before I move on, I'd like once again to invite everyone to actively participate in this discussion. After the break, we'll have our Q&A session and you can send your questions in the chat, all right? Going further in our today's topic, I'd like to hear Professor Righetti's opinion on how a manager can deal with these challenges, all right? Dr. Righetti, what would you say to young managers who are preparing themselves to deal with these impacts caused by climate change?
That's a good question. We see the young people really going after good information and good programs at universities to answer that. Because we have issues related to consumer behavior, issues regarding operations, issues regarding finance. So guys, also regarding law, especially regulations, they are coming up to set some directions from governments, for example. So we see lawyers, we see engineers, we see finance and administrative guys, marketing guys, going after good programs at the universities to enrich their background in sustainability, so they are able to include sustainability in their decisions, in their analysis, and the reports they make for the companies and for their bosses. So it's important to find good program at the university worldwide to answer for these new requests from the companies for the young professionals.
Interesting that you touch in the topic of regulations, because we recently have seen major corporations adapting to the current scenario. Companies like Apple are launching campaigns on reducing their carbon footprint and many other initiatives aimed at reducing the impact that we have caused over the years on the environment. Considering these examples, I'd like to ask Professor Emmeline de Pius again about the company's response to all of it. Professor Pius, have you been observing markets and companies? How are they reacting to the current context? In your opinion, what are companies doing to face this new and uncertain environment?
Companies are taking a variety of actions. The companies that I would consider good examples to follow, not everybody is the same, are both looking inwardly and saying, what can we do to reduce our carbon footprint, to be more environmentally aware, to look towards the future, to understand. So the biggest thing, because things are changing so fast, because historical data no longer predicts the future, is as a company and as a manager, you now have the burden to stay very informed, to keep on top of information about climate change, about these global issues that maybe 20, 30 years ago, managers didn't really concern themselves with. Now this is your business, this is your concern. You have to stay on top of this, because any advice I give you now, maybe in 6 months, the answer will be different. That's how fast things are changing. So some basic things are basic awareness, be aware of your carbon footprint. When you build a new building, there are things that you can do both for safety. Don't submit to the temptation to, oh, here's this cheap land. Well, it's in a floodplain, but that's, it's only susceptible to 500-year floods. So we're probably pretty safe. I've seen people make that mistake. And you know what? 500-year floods are no longer 500-year floods. Land that has been predicted to flood every 500 years is now flooding every 50 years, every 20 years. So be very cognizant about your building sites, just the physical plant. Be cognizant. I've seen companies be very good about helping their employees, giving them subsidies to live closer to work, giving them subsidies for public transportation. In fact, my university does that. I have my ID card. I can just hop on the bus for free, thanks to my employer, because they see how important it is to encourage people to use public transportation and not get in the car and clog up the freeways and pour all of that, bad stuff into the air that's giving us problems. So as a manager individually, you might say, oh, I'm just one person. What can I do? And granted, you individually can't change the world overnight. But again, I would say to you, stay informed, because you can steer your companies to do the right thing. Companies eventually working together can put pressure on governments to perhaps eventually work together to do the right thing. People are talking about technological solutions to climate change. So far, we're not anywhere near a solution there, but it's something to keep an eye on for the long term. Certainly don't shut that off, although that's not a silver bullet. We have no silver bullets right now.
Thank you so much, Professor Emmeline de Pius. I'd like to conclude by asking Professor Raya what the solutions could be, if there are any, to address sustainable related issues. Professor Raya, in your opinion, is there any silver bullets to successfully overcome these issues?
I think it would be really great if people just approached sustainability without any pretensions, without any impressions. Just go about learning how to infuse sustainability in your life and in your education and in your work, just naturally. I think we need to be open-minded about it. Everything that we've learned and discussed has always been driven by the market or the brand or what's coolest on TikTok or Twitter. Let's take a moment to think of ourselves as global citizens, as people responsible for, ensuring that our next generations have a really good opportunity. So that those silver bullets are honesty, partnership, open communication, creativity and financing, and I would say lastly is understanding that value isn't just a monetary thing. Value means so many different things to so many different people, and we need to really understand that and share that so that people know that